£200 million investment in neighbourhood policing next year, part of up to £1.1 billion additional funding for police forces across the country next year.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Home Secretary will be aware that councils up and down the country have real problems with nuisance tenants creating mayhem and committing crimes and making residents' lives a misery. So does she agree with me that these nuisance tenants should have a one-strike-and-out policy? And if they keep creating these problems, they should be out, and the local authorities have no duty to rehouse them.
Well, we need stronger action against antisocial behaviour. That includes whether that is havoc in town centres, whether that is off-road bikes, or whether that is nuisance neighbours making the community's lives a misery. But that is why this government is increasing neighbourhood policing and also giving the police and local communities much stronger powers to crack down on antisocial behaviour so that we can take back our communities from the vandals, thieves and those who are making other people's lives a misery.
Jessica Bourne.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Like my honourable friend, constituents consistently raise the issue of the antisocial use of e-scooters and e-bikes, and I certainly welcome on their behalf the measures in the Crime and Policing Bill to seize them. But can ministers also talk to the Department of Transport about updating the legislation, particularly around e-scooters, because their usage has exploded but legislation hasn't kept pace?
Well, I can tell my honourable friend we are working with the Department of Transport. We do need to ensure that communities can be kept safe, that proper safety standards are met, and also that antisocial behaviour is tackled. I have also seen with Staffordshire Police the work that they are doing using drones, for example, in order to follow those who are on dangerous off-road bikes so that they can take action.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Would the Home Secretary agree with me that it would be easier for the police to tackle antisocial behaviour if they had more support for special constables? The number of special constables has fallen in recent years, particularly since the pandemic. So would she agree to look at amending the Employment Rights Act so that special constables are brought within Section 50 of that Act?
So I do agree with the honourable member that special constables can play a really important role, and their numbers have dropped by around 2/3 over the last 14 years. I think that is damaging, and we want to see an increase in the special constables, and we are working with police forces on how best to do that, to make sure that they can also play their part both on the streets in neighbourhood teams but also supporting other specialist aspects of the work that the police do.
Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Greater Manchester has one of the highest crime rates in the country, with many suffering as a result of antisocial behaviour. But this weekend we saw police officers knocking on the door of a grandmother because she dared to criticise a Labour councillor for his role in the pensioner hating WhatsApp scandal. Does the Home Secretary agree that this is a waste of police time?
Well, this government has been clear about the important focus of policing needs to be on the neighbourhood crimes that blight our communities. That's why we are increasing neighbourhood policing, when I'm afraid his party slashed the number of neighbourhood police on the beat, so we lost thousands of neighbourhood police in our communities, and why we are also focusing the police on serious violence. That's what tomorrow's legislation will be, is to focus on tackling serious violence and also making sure that we deal with the most serious crimes in our communities, something that too often, time and again, the party that presided over a 61% increase in shoplifting alone in the last 2 years they were in power has failed repeatedly to do.
Alex McIntyre.
Question number 4, please, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This government is determined to tackle the scourge of domestic abuse wherever it is found, and that is why we have already announced bold measures to transform the policing response to these devastating crimes. Last week, I am proud to say that we embedded the first domestic abuse specialists in 999 control rooms in 5 police forces under Reneem's law, and we plan to equip forces everywhere with the tools they need to crack down on perpetrators and keep victims safe, including in Gloucester.
Alex McIntyre.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for her answer to that question and for all the work that she has done over many, many years to champion victims and survivors of domestic abuse. But as she will know, one of the biggest challenges facing survivors and victims of domestic abuse in Gloucester is the financial implications of fleeing that abuse. So will she agree to meet with me to discuss my 10-minute rule bill to introduce safe leave for victims of domestic abuse and violence? Thank you.
I am grateful to the kind words of my honourable friend and for his commitment to supporting victims. He will be aware that his private member's bill will be the responsibility of the Department for Business and Trade, but I would of course be willing to meet with him and them to discuss it.
Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Caroline.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The recent NAO report on the government response to violence against women and girls, which of course includes domestic abuse, made a number of recommendations. My committee is going to be looking at this issue as well, but I wonder whether the Minister could make any comments about what the government's response will be to those recommendations and how she will make sure that domestic abuse is tackled across the country, including in Gloucester.
I was waiting for the Gloucester. As the Right Honourable Lady will know, that the NAO report is largely based on the period of office of the previous government, and it makes some very clear recommendations that I have. It would be premature of me to say, but the violence against women and girls strategy that will be published by this government in early summer will undoubtedly be looking to the NAO recommendations.
Lynn Harris.
Question 6, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
The trafficking of women and girls for sexual exploitation is a horrific crime, and the government works closely with law enforcement to tackle the drivers of this offending and to target prolific perpetrators. This includes through operational intensification initiatives aimed at tackling modern slavery threats. The Online Safety Act sets out priority offences, including sexual exploitation and human trafficking offences. Starting from the 17th of March, in scope, companies must adopt systems and processes to address these offences.
Harris.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Minister for her response. But I would say that in 2023, the then Home Affairs Select Committee recommended that pimping websites be outlawed. The previous government took no action, allowing sex traffickers to continue to legally exploit their victims online. I've since been made aware of further online exploitation, with websites allowing men to rate and review the women for whom they're paying for sex, including admissions of trafficking, underage sex and rape. Can the Minister share what action this government will take to protect victims of online sexual exploitation?
I thank my honourable friend, and like her, I'm horrified that such practices should be allowed to continue. Online platforms have a duty to assess the risk of illegal harms on their services, with a deadline of the 16th of March 2025, subject to the codes of practice completing the parliamentary process on the 17th of March. Online platforms will need to take safety measures set out in codes of practice and use other effective measures to protect users from illegal content like that which she speaks. And the activity, if they fail, will face significant penalties. As she might imagine, I will be keeping a close eye on that.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Secretary of State inform the House what measures she is taking to address the record backlog of court cases in the UK, which, as the Chief Inspector of the Crown Prosecution Service and Serious Fraud Office has warned, is on target to hit 100,000? In particular, can she comment on the call for changes to be made in the way court cases are being prioritised, which at present is resulting in victims of serious crimes, including sexual trafficking, exploitation and rape, face years-long waits for trials, while less serious crimes are being prioritised ahead in the queue?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and I also recognise the parlous state of our criminal justice system that we inherited, that has led to some rape victims and sexual violence victims waiting years on end. I noted the Shadow Justice Secretary had only just noticed this failing now that he had a shadow in front of his name, even though his government presided over that failing for a decade. We will, part of the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, which I work very in concert with the Ministry of Justice on, is absolutely about ensuring this is sorted.
Shadow Minister Mike Vickers. I've got to get through.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Fiona from Bradford was failed numerous times by social services and local police after suffering horrific sexual abuse at the hands of gangs of men whilst in a care home. Bradford's local authority have shamefully sought to block a local inquiry